You are standing in the kitchen, holding your phone, reading the same message for the fourth time before sending it. It is not even an important message, just a simple reply. But your thumb hovers over the screen, while another voice in your head quietly asks if that sounded wrong. You delete a word, then put it back, then change the whole sentence. Somewhere behind the words, you are already imagining how the other person will read it, how their face might look, what they might think you meant, what they might not say. No one else seems to do this. They type, they send, they move on. You send the message and immediately feel a strange tightness in your chest, like something small but unfinished is still hanging in the air. And without realizing it, you start talking to yourself again. Not out loud, not always, but constantly. Running commentary, replaying conversations, arguing with people who are not there, explaining things nobody asked you to explain. And if you have ever caught yourself doing that, really doing it, not just thinking, but holding entire conversations in your head, this video is about you. Because the people who talk to themselves the most are often the ones who notice the most. And the ones who notice the most rarely feel at ease. You probably do this more than you admit, walking into a room and already predicting how the interaction will go, thinking of what you should say before anyone even speaks, replaying something you said hours ago and feeling a delayed wave of embarrassment that nobody else remembers, staying quiet in a group conversation but having a full debate in your head the whole time. You are the kind of person who can sit in silence and still feel like your mind is loud. And the strange part is, you know it sounds a little crazy, but you also know it makes you sharp. You see patterns other people miss. You notice tone changes. You hear what people almost said. You catch the meaning behind jokes. You understand situations faster than most people, but somehow you also feel more uncomfortable inside them. That contradiction is not random. And the part that makes this pattern so hard to understand is that it did not start as overthinking. It started as adaptation. Think about the last time you were in a conversation where something felt slightly off. Nothing obvious, nobody said anything wrong, but your body felt tight. Your mind started running through possibilities. Did I say too much? Did they mean that differently? Should I say something now? Should I stay quiet? Should I explain myself? Should I not? Most people feel the moment and move on. You analyze the moment and stay there long after it ends. And this is where the second voice comes in, the one that talks to you about you, not just thinking, commenting, judging, rehearsing, rewriting, defending, explaining, predicting. Psychologists sometimes call this internal dialogue, but that sounds too clean, too simple. What it really feels like is having a second version of yourself watching everything you do in real time and asking if you did it right. If you have ever stayed up at night replaying a conversation word for word, trying to figure out why something felt wrong even when nothing actually happened, this hits harder than you want to admit. Because the truth is, this kind of self-talk is not just intelligence. It is awareness mixed with tension. Your brain learned early that paying attention kept you safe. Not safe from danger in the obvious way, safe from embarrassment, safe from rejection, safe from saying the wrong thing, safe from being misunderstood. So your mind started running simulations before life even happened. You think you are just thinking a lot, but your nervous system thinks it is preparing for impact. And that is the part nobody talks about. You see it in small things. You cancel plans and feel relief before you feel guilt. You think of the perfect response hours after the conversation ended. You explain simple decisions to people even when they did not ask. You stay calm during conflict, but feel distant inside, like you stepped outside yourself just to keep control. You do not react fast. You react carefully. And careful people learn to talk to themselves more than they talk to anyone else. Because inside your head is the only place where you can test what will happen before it happens. This pattern usually starts earlier than you think, not always from something dramatic, sometimes from something subtle. Growing up around people whose moods changed without warning, being the one who had to read the room, being the one who noticed tension before anyone said anything, being the one who learned that saying the wrong thing could shift everything. So your brain learned to scan first and speak later. Over time, scanning turned into analyzing. Analyzing turned into rehearsing. Rehearsing turned into constant self-talk. And now, silence feels unnatural. Even when nothing is wrong, your mind keeps running, because it does not trust that nothing is wrong. Some people watching this will laugh and say everyone talks to themselves. Some people will feel uncomfortable because this sounds too familiar, and a few people will feel strangely exposed and not know why. And those reactions usually tell you more about how your mind works than anything else. There is another part of this that most people misunderstand. Talking to yourself is not always anxiety. Sometimes it is the brain trying to organize too much awareness at once. When you notice details other people ignore, your mind needs somewhere to put them. So it builds conversations, explanations, scenarios, arguments. You become both the person living the moment and the person observing it. That split can make you smart. It can also make you tired. You walk out of a social situation and instead of feeling done, your mind keeps going. What did they mean by that? Did I sound weird? Should I have said less? Should I have said more? Why did that feel off? Why did I react like that? Why do I always do that? And this is where the pattern becomes harder to ignore, because the more you analyze yourself, the harder it becomes to just be yourself. You start monitoring your tone while you speak, watching your expressions while you smile, thinking about how you look while you laugh, correcting yourself in real time. You are not just living your life, you are narrating it. And somewhere along the way, the narrator got louder than the person. Around this point, most people assume the solution would be to think less. But here is the question that changes everything. What if the self-talk never started because you were weak? What if it started because at some point in your life, being aware was the only way to stay emotionally safe? If that is true, then the voice in your head is not the problem. It is the habit that never turned off. Think about how often your mind prepares for reactions that never happen. You imagine someone judging you before they do. You expect tension before it exists. You feel the need to explain before anyone asks. Your brain is trying to protect a version of you that learned early that being misunderstood hurt more than being silent. So you learn to edit yourself before the world could. And that is why the people who talk to themselves the most often look calm on the outside. They already had the argument inside. They already rehearsed the explanation. They already imagined the worst case. By the time the moment comes, they are ready. But being ready all the time has a cost. It makes it harder to relax around people, harder to feel spontaneous, harder to believe that you can say something wrong and still be accepted. You start to feel like you have to stay one step ahead of every interaction, even with people you trust, especially with people you trust. If you have ever noticed that you feel more comfortable alone, not because you dislike people, but because your mind finally goes quiet, that is not random. It means your brain only stops scanning when it feels completely safe. And for some people, that feeling is rare. There is another strange part of this pattern. The same voice that protects you also questions you. The same awareness that makes you sharp also makes you doubt. You can read other people easily, but reading yourself feels harder. You know exactly what everyone else might think, but you are never fully sure what you feel until hours later. You replay moments, trying to figure out what your reaction actually was. Not what you showed, what you felt. And sometimes the answer does not come right away. Some people hearing this will recognize themselves immediately. Some people will feel like this sounds exaggerated. And some people will suddenly remember moments from years ago that they never fully understood. If this feels uncomfortably accurate, you are probably the kind of person who learned to observe before you learn to relax. The mind that talks to itself all the time is not broken, it is trained. Trained to notice shifts in tone, trained to predict reactions, trained to avoid mistakes, trained to stay in control. But control and peace are not the same thing. You can be the smartest person in the room and still feel like you never fully put your guard down. You can understand everyone else and still feel like nobody completely understands you. You can hold full conversations in your head and still struggle to say the one honest thing out loud. And that is the quiet cost of always thinking one step ahead. Because the voice in your head never really leaves. It just gets quieter when you feel safe, and louder when you do not. So the real question is not why you talk to yourself so much. The real question is when you first felt like you had to.